The history of racing around Elkhart Lake dates back to 1950, but it's never too late to write some more firsts. Welcome to Road America, where today we'll crown the very first IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge champion. My name's Arjuna Kankipati, joined alongside in the broadcast booth by Joe Peak. And what a wonderful track to come to. Just a couple of weeks after we came to Elkhart Lake for a 6-hour endurance event for the MOTUL SportsCar Endurance Grand Prix, it's time for a 2-hour LMP3 dash to settle a 4-race endurance championship. Up in the Midwest, or I should say, north of the country, sits Road America, and the original layout from 1955 still preserved, with so many iconic turns. Up towards turn 1, the highest point of the track, drop down into turn 5, maybe the best of the passing opportunity, and then in towards the kettle bottoms and the kink, maybe the most treacherous and fast point on the track. Third member of our broadcast team is Joey Atterbury. Let's head down to pit lane and see what he's got in store as we get set for this final race.
We are down here at Road America on pit road. The cars are about to roll off right now. The safety car is just leaving, but I think the biggest storyline today is the difference in weather. It has been so hot, so humid on the previous rounds. It's a beautiful day here in Wisconsin with actually a little bit of breeze. I'm looking forward as these cars roll off onto the racetrack.
And just one formation lap for them to get themselves up to temperature and into the rhythm. Joe Peak, let's talk championship though, because 3 previous endurance rounds, Sebring, Circuit of the Americas, and VIR, we've seen 3 different winners, and just 40 points cover the top 3 in points as we enter this final 2-hour dash.
Yeah, it makes for an interesting scenario coming into this thing where, I mean, it's going to be minute differences. We have a whole grid of championship scenarios in front of us to try and keep track of where it will all end up, because it's going to be some complicated math, unfortunately. The one simple thing, whoever has the most at the end is our winner, but getting there after 2 hours is a whole nother deal.
The only simple possibility on the matrix in front of us is if the championship leaders, Gebhard Motorsport, Oscar Tuno, Valentino Catalano, grab the victory, in which case nothing the rest of the field can better their points haul. Brian Thenis, Patrick Kujala, they sit 30 points back. A win could see them grab the championship, but if Tuno and Catalano finish second, the championship would go back to countback. Let's quickly talk about the starting grid though, because 9 of these LMP3 cars rolling down to turn 5, and at the front of the field for the 4th time this season, it's Gebhard Motorsport. Oscar Tuno wound up the Duquesne D09 chassis and punches his ticket to the front row. Alongside is Lincoln Day, who'll hand over to Wyatt Brickachek to push towards the end, while Ari Baylog, Garrett Griss for the second Tony driver development car. Inside of Thenis and Kujala, one of our Bronze Cup pairings to watch out for as they head into the final 2 championship points-paying rounds. Travis Hill joined by Daniel Oliver in the Shopify Racing by Tooth Ligier alongside them. First time that we've seen Slade Stewart and Andy Lee in the Riley 29 in the IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge. Just behind them, Jake Williams and Danny Sufi, the Texas pair in the Pinaxis Zone 4 number 11, joined by Patrick Liddy and John Hirschberg, and what's been an interrupted VP Racing SportsCar challenge for them. And then at the back of the field, back in action for Matt Forbush and Jules Caranta in the Forbush number 18. One of the major things that we'll be talking about as well today, Joe, is the fact that 40-minute minimum drive time between these 2 driver pairings, but you do have to come down to pit lane twice for a minimum of 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And we have seen some teams fall afoul of that minimum pit and get penalties as a result.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the big aspect on this is keeping out of trouble, because that's really the only thing that can wind up beating yourself. You really want to try and make sure and cross your T's and dot your I's so that you don't wind up under the gun a little bit here. Of course, the safety cars can also affect what happens out there today and some of how they want to play that pit strategy, the timing of it. But for the most part, from talking to the teams yesterday, they're most just kind of watching out for that. Otherwise, it is get the pro in the car as soon as possible and then get on out there.
I'd say maybe one counter to that is going to be Travis Hill in that Shopify racing car. Daniel Oliver transitioning into the real world. We saw him at the Circuit of the Americas endurance round as well. But Shopify Racing have often employed this strategy. Put Travis out first and then do a driver change early. Get Travis back in for the end of the race. One final 2-hour dash to settle the very first IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge here at America's home for racing, the National Park of Speed. Let's see who can conquer the challenge that this track provides. It looks simple on paper, but the 160 feet of elevation change around the 4 miles leave a lot for the drivers. Master a long wait as we crest the hill and finally punch the throttle and get the green flag dropped at Road America. Oscar Tuno gets a big jump and leaves the Tony driver development pair of Lincoln Ari Baylog to squabble behind into turn 1 and drop down now out of the opening corner. And single file they'll work. Day in front of Baylog. Finish jumped by Travis Hill in that Shopify racing car. He's looking feisty on this race start as we begin now the descent into turn number 5.
Yeah, and this is where you're going to see that slipstream really come into effect. These cars punch a decent hole in the air. One of the heaviest braking zones down at turn 5. The left-hander offering many opportunities for overtakes, but Tuno is well ahead. Meanwhile, it looks like Baylog and Tinas are going to go side by side, and Brian is going to make an easy pass down to that left-hander.
That's actually Travis in that very distinctive Shopify Racing by Tooth car, but now back up the inside as we get to turn 6. Travis Hill gets pushed off the track. Brian Thenis pulls back alongside in the white and red 77. He does not make the move as we sweep through the hurry downs where there's been a bit of extra track added on the outside. We saw a lot of people using a couple of weeks ago in the 6-hour race. Some track limits have been enforced for this weekend. Drivers reminded of where they can and cannot go. Sweep down through the carousel, reach the very bottom of the track and up towards the kink, one of the fastest corners that these drivers will face all season long, and it's narrow, it's fearsome, and it leads up to the heavy braking zone at Canada Corner.
And from what I understand, it's going to be flat out easily for certain drivers. Others, it'll be down to their bravery as up the inside. It looks like the 77 of Thenis is able to get through on Hill. He tries to fight back with an over-under. Not enough speed because it quickly comes in to Bill Mitchell Bend. But I think he's going to have another bite of things. This is the longest straight on the track here, the front stretch. So as long as you are close to that car ahead, it's going to pull you forward something fierce.
But you do climb up about 80 feet right there, and you feel all of that as you see the sky pointed upwards and then finally flattens out on the run to turn number 1. Oscar Tuno clear by about 3 seconds, and I don't think that's unexpected. Tuno and Catalano and the Gebhard Duquesne have been slowly picking up their speed through the course of the weekend, and while Lincoln Day is one of a couple of silver-rated pairings alongside of Tuno and Catalano, the rest of the field has entered in the Bronze Cup. Lincoln Day maybe not as quick this weekend as his teammate Wyatt Brikacek. Why is that battle, by the way, between Brian Thenis and Travis Hill so important? Well, they currently sit 1 and 2 in the Bronze Cup Championship, and that championship will not be settled today. They will head to Road Atlanta at the very end of the IMSA season and settle things with a couple of sprint races as well. But currently, it's a very small margin between the two of them. They've been trading podiums and victories back and forth between each other and keeping each other close on track as they head back to the carousel for the second time of asking.
Yeah, well, this is obviously going to be the end of the Airbnb Endurance Challenge. It's part of a bigger picture, like you said. So you do have to consider that as you're racing. Is it worth it if you try and risk something for the Endurance Championship when there could be other things at play later on in the season? In the meantime, look at Baylog start to pull away a little bit here. At first, he was a bit under threat in the early laps. Now, starting to get a bit of distance, maybe can start to focus forward because it is a long race today.
Slightly further back, we see Jake under pressure from Slade Stewart. We've seen this Riley 29 in one of our sprint rounds at Mid-Ohio earlier this year. Slade Stewart actually winning the second race in Bronze Cup. But the first time he's jumped into the endurance format, he's been racing a lot more GT machinery in a car known as Sparkle Farts. Why? Because his daughter designed the livery, and that's the name that stuck. But not carrying that look over onto this particular car. And we'll have to find out what the nickname for this machine is. But tucked up behind Williams, and these drivers have dropped off by about 4 seconds from Travis Hill, who's picked up some grass down at turn 3 as he really tried to open up the entry.
Yeah, you want to try and avoid getting any of that on the car around here. Like you said, there are a few areas where they have paved runoff, but for the most part, this place remains mostly old school with grass right at the edge of the track. In fact, you can see after the 6 hour you mentioned, they've been trying to regrow some of the grass on the outside between 5 and 6, and that has caused some of that netting to get caught on cars. That's something to watch out for if you find yourself in a side-by-side battle there and pushed wide.
Always have to be aware. And this is a season where we've had a couple of races interrupted by safety cars. Most recently at VIR, where there was a couple of, I'll call them uncharacteristic mistakes up towards the corner where the oak tree used to sit. But Circuit of the Americas, on the other hand, caution-free. So it's really hard to judge how this race is going to play out, especially when we go back to the strategical element. The pit stop window will technically open in 10 minutes time. You can't pit until 15 minutes have passed from the start of the race or later than 15 minutes before the end of the race. Ari Balog under pressure, the best of the Bronze Cup runners. Brian Phoenix started off a little bit sluggish, but that Forte Racing 77's coming alive right now.
Thankfully, it looks like he's got his feet underneath him. As far as the danger zones, I think to watch out for, there's your usuals, such as through the kink. That can cause some big problems that could bring out the safety car. Turn 7, of course. But if I'm going by how this weekend has gone with the various series that are sharing this weekend here with the Airbnb Endurance Challenge, turn 6 has been calamity corner. It has caught out so many drivers for some reason this weekend. And these cars probably not immune to that. Remember, while they have the downforce, that's one of the slowest corners on the track, and it has a crest coming in. So you're likely to see them start to lose grip. It'll be easy to make mistakes with these being such downforce heavy cars.
We saw a yellow flag at turn 14. That was Slade Stewart in the Riley 29. He went off there actually in practice 2 yesterday, did some damage to the car, and the team did a great job to get it fixed up in time to send him back out there. Might have dented his confidence slightly, but we'll see how his pace will pick back up. The fastest lap from Oscar Tuno, a 2:01.176 behind Lincoln Day's best, a 2:02.9. So again, a little bit slower for the time being is Lincoln Day, but Wyatt Bricacek, when he jumps in, if there is a neutralization of the field, will be there to put the pressure on. But Gebhard on course potentially to win the championship if they win the race. The math is simple for them and makes it a lot simpler for us as well. Through the kink, this is a place where, like you said, we've seen some issues through the years. It's so high speed, and it's a place where, Joe, you build up your confidence over the course of a weekend.
Yeah, when talking to the drivers, like I mentioned earlier, for some it's going to be easy flat out. Others, not so much. And we have to remember, when you're following that car ahead, that also can affect it. And some of them were saying that it's actually been a bit difficult to try and get that practice because we don't have huge fields out here. So they all kind of go and run their own program in practice and find themselves not necessarily close to other cars to try and get that field. This is, for some, the first time they've really had to deal with being around other cars in some of the fast corners around this track. As Tunho, man, he is schooling the field in these early stages. The pace differential is impressive over everyone else.
They didn't get a chance to come and test here, did the team, nor the drivers. So they are learning as they go. The VP Racing Sports Car Challenge has never visited Road America previously. And while IMSA has made 48 top-level starts across the IMSA GT, Grand National, and the Modern WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, at least from my research, only in 2020, in the year impacted by COVID, did the IMSA Prototype Challenge end up coming here for some races where you can see some of the onboards posted on YouTube by some drivers. Looks like a fun conclusion to the race at the very least. But you talk about lack of practice. Looking at my notes in front of me, Wyatt Brikacek has a total of 10 laps across of 3 practice sessions, Joe, for this weekend. And you talk to a lot of sim racers, they'll do 20 sessions probably of about 20 laps to try and get ready for a weekend. It's a very different thing when you have limited practice time to get up to speed.
Very much so, and I think that is one of the things that you see makes a bit of a difference for some drivers when they take that leap from sim racing up here to real world racing is adaptability, being able to learn quickly on the track and the car. That's going to really be what sets certain drivers apart as a raw talent out on the track, because you really just don't get the chances in real racing to put lap after lap after lap in. And while it translates very closely to the sim where you do a lot of that practice, there are some things that you just can't know until you actually get there. Looks like we got a nice little battle here between the 18 and the 29 coming out of the last few corners.
I tell you what, if you could give real racers unlimited practice time, boy, would they take it, especially if you told them they didn't have to pay for the consumables as well. We did get word from Andy Lee, co-driver of the 29 Riley, that it was just a spin for Slade Stewart, and clearly confidence not dented that much because his last lap was right back on the money. And as he closes up to that Forbush performance number 18 into turn 1, not going to make the move here. A little bit squirrely under the brakes, set things up into turn 5.
Ooh,
in fact, never mind, gets the move done out of turn 1.
Yeah. Nice move by Slade Stewart there. Pretty textbook move down to the inside. Honestly, a lot of times down into turn 3, you are setting that up into turn 1, looking to get yourself the better run, because while it's not a long straightaway, it does offer a pretty decent braking zone. Now, the one caveat is here, and it looks like the 29 has done a good job of managing that because they are not repassed, because sometimes you can get that pass done into 3, and then the slipstream just allows the other driver to kind of uno reverso that one and pull it back on you with a much longer straight and an even heavier braking zone down into turn 5. But Matt Forbush, he's one of those drivers that is working his way up through the ranks, not from sim racing necessarily, but from GT cars. And he said he's still getting used to gaining the confidence in the downforce in this car, because he's used to GT racing, which has a lot less of that and is so much more mechanical grip. So he's still gaining confidence in what the car can do.
That's what this series is intended to do. The IMSA Prototype Challenge before it, the IMSA VP Racing Sports Car Challenge, to help introduce people to the next rungs on their motorsports journey. And that's why next year, some changes to the 2027 VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. We go to a full endurance format with 90-minute to 3-hour races, and maybe most excitingly, the Airbnb Bronze Cup, a new partner for the long-running Bronze Cup, which sees Brian Thenis as the 2-time defending champion. Whoever wins that champion in 2027 will earn an invitation to the Rolex 24 the following year. So for some of these drivers who are continuing their journey, well, what a reward that would be to head to the World Center of Racing in January and take part in one of the biggest 24-hour races in the world. Brian Thenis still keeping Ari Balog close, and shouldn't forget how topsy-turvy some of these races have ended up being. In particular, last time out when Garrett Grist and Ari Balog, I'd counted them out of contention at one point, but ended up being the victors at Virginia International Raceway.
Yeah, and it was funny because I was talking to their team yesterday, and they were saying how important some of the downforce is on these cars to try and keep them clean, especially at a high-speed track like this. And that was the first thing I said to them. Well, Grist's car came away with a whole chunk missing and still managed to win. They were like, yeah, kind of shrugged and said, sometimes you get lucky with how things go. But there's that old saying in racing, you make your own luck. And I think that's exactly what we saw out of them, is you kind of stick with it and you try to make do with what is thrown at you. I think they'll take what's happened today, which is a lot cleaner start, because that was, I believe, on lap 2 that happened last time. It was extremely early in the race that they found their car with damage.
I'm just looking at a gap visualizer that I have, and at one point in this race, they were 240 seconds back from the leader. Yes, that might have been also around one of our pit stop windows, but just remarkable. And endurance racing spirit, it's something that even in these 2-hour races, you really need to dig deep. Because we've only had a limited field of LMP3 cars, as long as you're classified, there are decent championship points to be gained. And with 3 different winners in 3 different races, it's why the matrix in front of us is as interesting as it really is. These drivers not too far back from Lincoln Day, by the way, only 7 seconds from the lead Tony Driver Development car, the number 95. Why do I bring that up? We are into the window where you could do a driver change. I think Travis Hill and Daniel Oliver in that Shopify Racing by 2 are they pondering if they want to come in and make their first driver change of the day.
Yeah, like I said, they're the ones that are kind of the odd man out there with the differing strategy. And it could be. So far, it's been relatively clean, though. So I wonder if you want to try to wait for a full course yellow to try and affect those driver changes. Maybe just kind of sit it out for a little bit longer before you do that too quickly, because the minimum pit stop time here, even though this is a long lap, you'll still lose a lap, even if you're the car in the lead trying to come in and take that pit stop.
It's 2 minutes 15 for pit stops that involve changing 4 tires, fuel, or a driver change. Now, that includes your time from pit entry to pit exit, which at Road America is probably longer than VIR. So it's going to put a little bit more pressure on the teams, actually, to get these pit stops done than maybe we've had in previous rounds. Pace continues to pick up at the front of the field from Oscar Tuno, now down to a 2-minute flat. Well, not quite. 2:05.34, so continuing to shave away the tenths of a second. Behind, Ryan Venus now 1.3 back from Ari Baylog. They've dropped Travis Hill slightly as well. Our Bronze Cup drivers, let's not forget, you said maybe wait for the full course yellow potentially. They could also just be looking, Joe, for the 40-minute minimum drive time to put their faster driver in.
That could be a possibility as well. And you talk about those best laps out there. I was just kind of looking through on my own. And I think what's more impressive is that Oscar's fastest lap is 1.2 seconds faster than Lincoln Day's fastest lap. I was saying earlier, they're running an amazing pace up at the front. They're leaving nothing to risk out here, because yes, you could find yourself with a safety car bunching everything back up. But if it stays green like we saw at Circuit of the Americas, you want that buffer just in case something does happen out there, in case you get a penalty, in case something unexpected happens. You can still wind up getting flats out there, or parts of the car can fail. Because you have to remember, some of the curbs around here can be pretty rough, these sawtooth curbs, and you don't want to really mess up these prototypes too much, taking them too often in some of the high-loaded corners, such as the kink.
It's where experience comes to play as well. The more you've been to this track, the more you'll know where you can, more importantly, can't place your car. Consistency is also so impressive. Tuno within 6 thousandths of a second of his previous fastest lap, as once again he goes purple at the front of the field. Lincoln Day's also been pretty consistent. He finds 16 thousandths of a second to best his previous lap time. A lot of the time, actually, just looking at the sectors in front of us that Oscar Tunho is gaining is in the final sector. Lincoln Day's pretty equal in Sector 1. He's not far off in Sector 2. But Tuno's making up close to 7 tenths of a second in Sector 3 alone.
And that's going to be essentially Canada Corner, Bill Mitchell Bend, and turn 14. There's not a lot of corners in that part of the track. Interesting that he's finding so much there, and they are all three very different corners on that part, because Canada Corner is mostly straightforward. It's a 90-degree right-hander. It does have a little bit of a jink in the braking zone. Bill Mitchell Bend, it's very blind coming in. It's a pretty fast turn, and it is tough on entry to try and line yourself up. So that one is a highly committed corner. Then you got turn 14, which is a curved entry. It is deceptive how tough that turn is, and it's so important because you need the good exit onto the main straight. If you fail to get that run off the corner, it's going to compromise your lap. So it's so imperative to get right. But those three different turns, for some reason, he's just got them all mastered.
They are really dialing in this new Duquesne. Remember, they've been racing with the previous DO8 chassis to start the 2026 season here in the US. The new generation LMP3 car going to be the only generation eligible for 2027 VP Racing Sports Car Challenge competition. And we've only got one of the old generation cars still left in today's field. That is the Sparkle Farts number 29, Riley, running the Ligier JSP20. It's effectively the same car. Only thing that's changed is we've gone from a 5.6 liter naturally aspirated V8 from Nissan to a 3.5 liter V6 from Toyota. Speaking of Sparkle Farts, by the way, he is starting to catch up to John Hirschberg, and Slade Stewart still relatively new in his racing journey. Also making that transition from GT now into prototypes and clearly getting up to speed pretty well. 2:04.183 is his fastest lap of the race so far, and that puts him only about 1.3 seconds off of the fastest Bronze Cup drivers, which around a lap as long as Road America, nothing to be trifled with.
Yeah, I think there was just that tiny hiccup at the start. The 29 had a bit of a spin down at the final corner, and then eventually found their way back onto the track, and that's why we've seen them going by Matt Forbush and now catching up to Hirschberg. They're slightly out of position, doing a very good job trying to make up for a little bit of an error. We often say if you're going to have a mistake or a problem in endurance racing, you want to have it early, because then you have the rest of the race to try to make up for that, and it seems like they are really taking that philosophy to heart here.
It's been a mixed year for John Hirschberg in that number 86. He had the big incident in the sprint round at the Circuit of the Americas. So down the car, but back in action with Patrick Liddy this weekend, who just turned 29 on the 8th of August. A couple of drivers actually celebrating birthdays, including Travis Hill, who celebrated a birthday yesterday. The Canadian team, what did they do to celebrate the boss's birthday? Got him a mug with Canada Corner on it. So happy birthday, Travis. He won't hear it. He's too busy enjoying his Shopify race number.
Yeah, doing a pretty good day here, up in the top 5 currently. Although it looks like they're sitting about 6.5 seconds off of Brian Thena's. Not too far back at this stage, with us being a little over 20 minutes into this race, but maybe wanting to pick up the pace a little bit to try and run him back down. Last lap about 0.3 of a second slower, and they both just crossed the line again, repeatedly 0.3 slower. They're both consistent, I'll give them that. It's just unfortunate when you're consistently slower than the car ahead is a little bit of dirt being kicked up down into turn 3.
Once again, just trying to open up the entry, and then on exit, Brian Thenis actually got a little bit tight, a bit of understeer maybe, pushed wide, and that has slowed his momentum on the run down to turn 5. These drivers being quite careful not to run onto the curb on the outside, unsettle the car, but as Thenis makes another mistake, deep then into the brake zone, rumbles over the curb outside. Ari Baylog starting to build a bit of a buffer here as we hit the 25-minute mark. We know these cars can be fueled up for about 50 minutes or so. It will take these drivers past their minimum drive time.
So going to be more limited by that drive time, it sounds like, for some of the teams at least, coming down into turn 5 once again. The 29 still catching up to Hirschberg, as that last lap was about 0.6 of a second quicker. 2.3 seconds back. They're on their way within the next couple laps to start to catch up to them.
Rolling down through this middle sector of the lap. Track continues to fall away from you. I mentioned there's 160 feet of elevation change, but that's really just measuring from top to bottom, because you've got things like the climb from turn 5 to 6 that just make this lap feel even longer. And one of the cool things that Road America does, amongst the many, to be completely clear, but during the summer months on Wednesdays, they open it up to the public to come and do 4 miles of fitness, as they called it. I did 5 laps of Road America on my bike a couple of weeks ago. And by the 5th lap, I never wanted to see that start-finish hill ever again. It is so steep. It is intimidating. And the worst part is, Joe, this climb in towards Mitchell, that's pretty steep as well.
Yeah, there's a number of parts on the lap where the television just doesn't do it justice, how much of a gain or a drop it is. Definitely that run up into the start-finish line is one of those. There's also a little bit of elevation coming here into turn 1. You can kind of see it here and there. Yeah, this camera angle, I think, shows it a bit more, how it sort of rises up into the corner, and then you've got that crest that then drops downhill here into turn 3. That also will bring you a bit more speed than maybe you expect into that corner. I think the big one, though, is turn 5 here at the end of the straight. The track goes away from you right as you're hitting the binders. It's maybe like a lesser version of the run into the chicane at Road Atlanta, but still definitely significant, where you have to take that into account, especially considering you don't really see the entry to the corner until you're pretty close up to it.
And ultimately, this is also narrow, so it's only 9 cars in this field. It won't be such a factor today, but in our endurance race a couple of weeks ago, the MOTUL SportsCar Endurance Grand Prix, marbles offline would have been a big factor, and setting up your moves could be difficult, but not even 30 minutes in, Slade Stewart's got a chance to make yet another move. Out through the carousel, he is tight to the inside, using the downforce on offer from Sparkle Farts as he runs up towards the kink, sweeps through in some of that dirty air, and now closes up in towards Canada Corner, the very bottom of the track. He's made one move in through the exit of turn 1. He'll do it maybe on the exit here as John Hirschberg closes the door. It's costing them a little bit of time, but Hirschberg can place his car in the right place. Lots of movement around this track, and if you're on the middle, you can just stall the car behind you, and once more Slade Stewart thinks better of a dive up the inside at the final corner.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, you got to be thinking about the corners ahead, or the straights ahead in this situation. I was kind of surprised he tried to move down into that last turn, considering that this is the longest straight. You really want to try and set yourself up, and I think he's cost himself a chance to try and make that pass into turn 1. There is sort of the philosophy of you want to make the pass as soon as you can when you rock up to a driver, and that is certainly not going to help. Again, getting out to the grass, maybe getting a little bit unsighted with the way the track kinks to the right on the braking down into 3.
We've seen it once, twice, and I'm sure it's happened plenty more times as well, as these drivers just try and take every little bit from Road America, wild under the brakes, onto the curb, and Slade Stewart's had a spin. He keeps it just out of the gravel as he rolls backwards. But this is just proving that he is still learning this car, and it's a good learning opportunity. Not doing the full season. Unfortunately now, confidence may be dented slightly once again.
Well, that is the second mistake in this race, and it was right as they were getting into a battle. Probably thankful that, again, there was all that runoff to kind of help gather the car up and get it going. It's one of those places where you're coming in at such a high speed, you can have some monumental wrecks coming in there, even winding up going all the way into the tire barriers that are down there in that runoff. But whatever the case, now needs to try and make up a little bit of ground. I'm seeing the gap showing at about 14 seconds, so when it was at about 0.4 of a second just moments ago.
Slade started racing only back in 2022 in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo. It's around when his journey started, I should say. Paired up with Andy Lee for the first time in 2023, and the two have been paired up ever since, doing a couple of Lamborghini Super Trofeo seasons and stepping up into GT World Challenge America in a BMW M2 GT3 car this year. 30 minutes about to be complete. 10 minutes until minimum drive time has been complete, and maybe that's why, unfortunately, our eyes and ears down on pit lane, Joey Atterbury, has not had a chance to catch up with the drivers. We're being told some of them are getting ready to jump into the car in about 10 minutes' time.
Yeah, you want to get focused at that point. Last thing you want to do is have to go and answer some questions. You're probably talking to the team, probably trying to be in communication with the driver, see how the handling is. Is there anything you need to know before you hop into the car? So yeah, their attention is turned elsewhere at this stage. But what that does mean is once we get drivers out of the car, at least once they've had a drink and maybe wipe the sweat off of their brow, hopefully we'll get a bit of reports of what it is like out there.
The joys of having a pit lane reporter who can go and ask the questions for us as we sit here in the broadcast booth. Out through the final sector, Brian Thenis is back on the case of Ari Balog as they come to the end of lap number 14. Oh, and into the wall. Brian Thenis in the 4-day racing number 77. Now, this will impact our Bronze Cup Championship, and surely full course yellow is going to be needed to recover the stricken 77 from the exit of turn 14.
I don't see them backing it out of that gravel trap. It buried it deep into the tires. It was a hard hit. Thenis now dropping down our tower, and you can see they're trying to, and full course yellow is out just as the tires start to spin up the gravel and dirt.
Well, that is going to make things very, very interesting strategically, because this will pack the field up right as the pit window will open. And I think what this does mean is any chance that Joey Atterbury had of catching up with drivers is going to be gone, because they are going to be suiting and booting up their second drivers. There you go. Andy Lee strapping on the balaclava and getting ready to get to work.
Yeah, he actually was ready to talk to us there for a brief moment, but unfortunately now the call has to be made, because like I said earlier, this is the opportunity that you want to capitalize on. When a yellow comes out, you're going to lose way less time. You can stay on that lead lap and get a cheap pit stop. So you have to try and pivot when these opportunities arise. If you had a strategy that meant something else, make sure you've got that plan B in your pocket. Know what the team is going to do when these things arise at these certain times, so that you're not scrambling and not knowing what the plan is essentially out there on the track. But that's got to be just gutting for Brian, because things were looking very smooth in that car. I don't know if we have a replay to look at it again, because I know we had that live, but I didn't quite see what caused him to spear off so suddenly.
See if we can grab a look. I said this impacts our Bronze Cup points, but Thenis and Kuyala were also in the IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge points. So watch, he just understeers, pushes out wide, and I wonder if he's maybe tagged some grass on the outside. I didn't see anything be kicked up, but that looks very, very awkward.
Yeah, I agree. It looked like he was pretty far to the left, which you do want to open that one up. Like I said, it's got that curved entry, and that's what makes it difficult. I think it looks like from this above view that he maybe did catch a little of that gray dirt and marbles, and once you're off that racing line, it's going to be hard to fight that understeer. You're basically just on a trajectory out into the kitty litter.
So let's try now and break down a couple of the point situations with second drivers stacked in the pit lane and ready to go. It means Garrett Grist will take over from Ari Baylog, Wyatt Brickachek from Lincoln Day. And I'm not sure if Valentino Catalano and Oscar Tuno will make the swap, but they may end up being forced to follow in the footsteps of their competitors strategically to avoid being caught back. Tuno and Catalano came into this weekend in the lead of the IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge points, as there's now also a spin for John Hirschberg, and I think that's down at turn 3 under yellow flag.
It is indeed. And thankfully, he gets going before the other car gets there, so he won't have to relinquish a position. Always embarrassing when you've got a spin under caution. You remember, the cars do have to try and hustle to catch up to the rest of the pack here, so you can't have those situations. Are we headed down to Joey? It sounds like he may have been talking to some of the teams.
We've got the car out of the barrier, so that's a good sign. Let's see if we can catch up with Joey Atterbury, who's ran down to Forte Racing to see what happened to the 77.
I did speak with Forte Racing just briefly moments ago. I know that the cars had a few moments throughout today's race, simply asked about the incident that got him into the gravel. Unfortunately, it was just a mistake on the driver's side of things. Nothing wrong with the car that the driver was reporting. So, Road America, we talk about how fast it is, how deep you got to take it on the brakes, and unfortunately, just an uncharacteristic mistake.
Thanks, Joey. Looking good, by the way, because our own Joey Atterbury getting back into the race car slightly later today in the Porsche Endurance Challenge North America. We'll be looking forward to supporting him in that. Look at the field, though. This is what is exciting about the safety car. Packing everything back up, and suddenly Oscar Tunho's 20-odd second advantage gone to effectively naught.
Yeah, and that's where sometimes you do need to be a little careful in terms of tires. If you use up a bit much of them and you get a safety car and those behind you are a lot fresher, they've been preserving them a bit more. I don't think that's going to be as big of an issue here today. There are some fast corners where we have to watch out for that, but they seem to be very much in control. I don't think this is going to compromise their strategy, but the big question is which of these cars are coming into pit lane, and that's why we're watching this shot to see how many of them will elect to use this opportunity.
Well, to be clear, they won't be pitting under full course yellow, although maybe Brian Thenis will if there is any damage on the front. They have some carbon fiberglass flying. So I would assume he is going to make an exit stage right and head up towards pit lane. But you can't do your mandatory pit stops during a full course yellow. What this does do, though, is pack the field up. And so if the lights were to come off this time by, we would be past minimum drive time. It takes us around 4 minutes to do a lap under caution here. You very conceivably could pit as the race comes back to green, I think, and get your driver change done.
And we can see, I'm glad we've got pictures. Oh my goodness, there is so much gravel and dirt underneath this car that is being ejected. But look at the right front. That's what we saw fly off there. And it's no wonder. It was such a hard hit. It must have really crumpled the front. And once he started to get up to speed, there was no way that thing was holding on. It is going to have to take a complete replacement of this front clip. And who knows if there's anything else underneath there that is damaged.
And they are going to do whatever they can to fix this up. Not just because they are mathematically in that IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge Championship standing fight, but go back to the Bronze Cups. Don't get finalized today. There's points from today that get added to whatever we get from Road Atlanta. And Travis Hill and Brian Thenis are locked in a very close fight as Brian Thenis looks to try and become a 3-times Bronze Cup champion. I've heard the lights are off on the pace car, which does mean we're coming back to green next time by. Does mean that we could see some pit stops. But let's again just go back to the championship standings. So I don't think we've had a chance to update those who are maybe just joining us. Tunho and Catalano get Gebhard Motorsports entered today with 950 points. Thenis and Kujalo with 920. Baylog and Grist with 910. Between them, White Brickacek in the Tony Driver Development 95, he's back on 840 points. But effectively, with that incident, what this means is now if Ari Baylog and Garrett Grist can win this race, Oscar Tuno and Valentino Catalano must finish second in order to win the championship. Great job from the team at Forte Racing, though, Joe. While I was talking championship, they've been able to clean up the front end of that car and attach a new nose.
Yeah, so it looks like they're happy with how everything is sitting underneath all of that. Hopefully it didn't bonk the steering at all as we watch them hurriedly try to get out before that safety car ducks into pit lane, because they've already lost laps because of the incident being recovered. They're trying to lose one less out here, and they've got maybe about a minute to go, because there you can see safety car is in to candid quarter. Less than a minute to go, really.
And as the final touches get finished up now, just attaching the new nose properly. No tape in this case. It's a little bit of tape maybe just for cooling on the radiator, but I think they are happy and they will send that car off and away. Lots of gravel left in the pit stall, but Brian Thenis is 2 laps down on the field, but back in the race. What great effort from the team there.
Yeah, someone, and I can already see them getting out the broom in front of me here in the booth. So, yeah, they've got some cleaning up to do from that one. Oh, drivers.
We've got a race onto pit entry. Yeah, Travis Hill pits. He was the first car, but I think John Hirschberg and Slade Stewart actually were side by side as they came up the hill. Brian Thenis watches the field, pours down into turn 1 with Oscar Tuno leading, Lincoln Day, Ari Baylog, Matt Forbush, and Jake Williamson, the 5 that run down into turn 3.
86 into his pit stall there. Team goes to work as it goes up on the jacks. Hirschberg will, looks like Liddy is indeed getting into the car.
So the 29-year-old celebrated his birthday 8 days ago. Jumps in. Remember, minimum pit time, 2:15. And that's from cone to cone, pit entry to pit exit. And you're not allowed to do fuel while you're doing your driver change or tires. And that's why they work. Left rear done. There's a big wiggle there from Lincoln Day, putting the power down, rising out under the Corvette bridge. It's still a coordinated effort here on pit lane. As much as they don't have to be as quick as they would on a WeatherTech Sports Car Championship weekend, there's still lots to do. And Patrick Liddy getting firmly strapped into that car. This is actually probably beneficial for them because they'll lose less time relative to the leaders because the leaders weren't up to speed coming out of that final corner.
Yeah, and sometimes I wonder about that, why we don't see more teams try to utilize those sort of situations, just try to minimize the time loss, knowing that there's going to be cars not necessarily as quick on that lap back. The Shopify Racing car looks like they have completed their pit stop, are just waiting for the clock to run out. I keep looking up at the sky because you can see it. It's very blue, that angle, but from other angles, there's some very dark clouds. Now, there is no rain predicted for today, but I can tell you, anytime you're in the Midwest, they can predict all they want, but that doesn't mean that's what reality will be.
As we found out on many an occasion. So it looks like only one stays out, means an extra lap. Jake Williamson in the pin access zone for Duquesne rolls into the turn 1, but Oscar Tuno makes his way down to his pit stall and no driver change there. So they are going to leave Tunho in. They're going to put Valentino Catalano into the car with about 40 minutes left to go in this race. I would presume Lincoln Day and White Brickacek would do a driver change. Same for Ari Baylog and Garrett Grist. And Bush will jump out. And the young 18-year-old, Jules Caranta. We saw him in one endurance round. It's time for his second race stateside as he takes over the 4 for number 18. Out of pit lane, by the way, Williamson has caught some of those drivers trying to get back up to speed.
You can see the battles happening up here. It sounds like, though, Joey has caught up with Daniel Oliver here in a bit. So let's go and check in with him with another former, well, current sim racer, I should say.
Yep, I'm down here with Daniel Oliver. Now, Travis opted to stay in the car right there. This is your first time with the team here at Road America in these LMP3 cars. How's the overall weekend going for you?
Yeah, it's going really good. The team is obviously super professional. They've obviously done really well in this championship to be at the point that they are. And so just coming in for me, it's just, of course, been a learning experience. And we've just been trying to build up bit by bit. I have 5 hours in an LMP3 at this point. Well, I'll hit 5 hours this weekend. So obviously it's a steep learning curve coming from the sim. But yeah, we're going really well.
How are you feeling inside the car? Road America is such a fast racetrack. It's so demanding, aggressive over the curbs. How is the overall feel for it?
Well, the team's got the car set up really, really good. So the car feels amazing. Of course, just got to get my body in the right shape, of course. I've been training that very well over the past couple of weeks and months. So I feel really good. The car is really good. I think we have a pretty good package together there.
Well, we look forward to watching you out there. Back up to you guys in the booth, Arjuna.
Background as a software engineer for Daniel Oliver, and the thing that he may not speak too much about, but he drove at the Circuit of the Americas, his home event, with a broken leg, was what he told me. So very difficult to get up to speed with what would have probably about 2 hours in the car at that time. It's Jake Williamson who jumps out. It's going to be Danny Sufi that takes over in the pin axis zone 4, ran by Gebhard Duquesne. Back down into turn 5, Slade Stewart jumps out of Sparkle Farts, Andy Lee in, and straight into a fight with Patrick Liddy. Bronze Cup drivers are out. These are, in a lot of ways, the professional race car drivers who are here coaching some of the drivers maybe newer on their racing journey. You expect Andy Lee and Patrick Liddy to be A, little bit faster, but B, right on the speed from the drop of the green flag.
See Kuyula already in the car, just about strapped up. They should be released soon. And yeah, I think that 29 is another good example of what we keep talking about, where in endurance racing, you can't quit. The car had 2 spins. They were way behind. Suddenly, the caution has brought them back in. And now that they've swapped drivers out, they're in a nice battle here and positions up from where they were before the yellow. So things can always completely turn around, and you could be handed opportunities that you don't want to have scuppered yourself not pushing at various points during the race. Keep going this entire time, because you never know what can happen.
Now, just waiting for our driver IDs to confirm, but looks like Lincoln Day has stayed behind the wheel of the 95 Tony Driver Development entry. Ari Baylog maybe still behind the wheel of that number 30, so saving Garrett Grist and Wyatt Brickachek for later on. Tony Driver Development, the only team that's won 2 races in this IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge, albeit split across of the 2 different entries in today's race. They've already announced a multi-car effort for next year's endurance-only VP Racing Sports Car Challenge that will see these LMP3 cars racing with GSX, that's GT4 machinery, and some BMW M2s as well. Down to turn 5, it was a great exit onto this back straightaway, and Andy Lee and Patrick Liddy go side by side. This is allowing Lincoln Day to close behind as well. This will be a 3-way fight sooner rather than later, and Andy Lee goes defensive up towards turn 6, and suddenly Lincoln Day is right there.
That's Andy's experience coming into play, because we saw that move earlier with cars battling. It is interesting how often you'll see a car make a pass down at turn 5, then they leave the door open, and the other car just pulls an over-under, suddenly finds himself to the inside. Once you've got the inside to turn 6, it is hard for the other car to overtake you if they're offline. So, yeah, that was a smart move on his part to just try and cover that one off. And I said they had made up positions. Well, we saw after now those pit stops are done, they're all the way up onto the podium.
It, I think, really has benefited them to come in on the green flag flying too. I think that was the important thing. I think Joey Atterbury may have someone else down on pit lane as well. Big wiggle for Lincoln Day. Let's see if he can give us a bit of insight into what happened with Brian Thenis in that number 77.
Yeah, we are here with Brian Thenis. You just hopped out of the 77. You went for a little bit of a wild ride down there. Can you maybe talk us through exactly what happened inside the car?
Yeah, yes, I did. I was trying to make up some time. We had a good pace all weekend. For some reason, we couldn't find the turn in the race, and boy, you can't go wide in the last corner here, and that's what I did. And I thought, I could just ride it out through the grass, and no can do. It didn't happen. Found myself in the gravel and just a passenger to the tire barrier, and that seems to happen.
Now, we did notice that you came in, they changed the nose on the car, they gave you 2 new front tires, and you went back out. Did you notice any difference in the car? How's Patrick going to feel for the handling?
Well, he's not going to be happy about it. It's a little bit off, but it's not too bad. So hopefully maybe we can pick up a couple points, and I'm still fighting for the bronze championship, so we want to see if it's possible to get in front of Travis Hill. He's a pretty good competitor, and we've been battling for the bronze championship all year, so we'll see what happens, and hopefully Patrick can do something about it. I don't know. See what happens.
Well, thank you very much for the time. We'll look forward to seeing Patrick out there, and back up to you guys in the commentary booth.
That's 2-time Bronze Cup champion Brian Thenis, who takes the blame for the incident. I always love when a racing driver can talk you through where things went wrong. Here comes, though, Jules Caranta, the young Frenchman, right onto the tail of Travis Hill. And that's about as easy a pass I think we're going to see. Jules Caranta, one of the fastest drivers on track right now, slips up the inside, down through the hurry downs.
Yeah, and talking to Jules, he seemed pretty confident. So did Matt, his co-driver, because we have to remember that he is a Duquesne development driver, so tons of experience here, and as well, just tons of experience over in Europe in these LMP3 cars. They felt very confident. Once they got Jules in the car, they're going to be a weapon out on track.
Some more fighting up and down through the field. I think we are about to get treated to the most action that we've seen in this IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge. Whoa, that was close. Lincoln Day pushed to the wall by Andy Lee, but he slips through on the climb to turn 1. And behind, the second Tony Driver development, the yellow, black, and red of Ari Baylog, half peak to the inside of Patrick Liddy before backing out of it. Lee, back and forth, down to turn 3. The lights flash from Patrick Liddy as well. 4 cars giving it everything they've got here at Road America. What more could you ask for? There's the confirmation, by the way. It is Wyatt Brikacek that's jumped in to replace Lincoln Day.
And things are getting a bit frantic here. You got to keep your wits about you, because you can find simple mistakes can suddenly become big ones when you're battling with this many cars around you. If you are Lee or Liddy or Baylog out there, watch out for those cars in front. Oof, as there was a bit of a lockup coming up over the crest of turn 6. If the cars in front of you are battling, you need to set yourself up to try and take advantage of that battle. Don't necessarily get involved yourself, but look for those corner exits to try and make an easy overtake down the straights. Timing
updating on our screen, just as I was asking our producer to see if he could check for me. It is Garrett Grist that's got in for Ari Baylog, and these are the fastest drivers now out on track, being let loose to roll around Road America. And like I said, we may be treated to some of the best racing that we've this short 4-round championship. Important to note that Catalano has also got in to replace Oscar Tuno. Effectively, the entire field has fulfilled their minimum drive time.
Wow. Okay, so we got an hour left to go, still half of this race, and we've got a lot of hot shoes out there racing right now. This is going to be a fascinating run to the finish.
I'll correct myself because my brain was working slower than my mouth. There's still one team that's yet to fulfill their drive time, but that's Travis Hill and Daniel Oliver in the Shopify Racing by tooth number 2. They'll do their driver change later on. Here comes the speed from Grist to the outside into turn 1, and Andy Lee can do nothing but get onto the brake slightly earlier and allow the Tony Driver development car up to 4th.
Grist, like we had mentioned earlier, did an incredible job dragging that car up to the win, back at VIR, and I don't think he's lost any of that verve here as he's moved himself up into fourth with that move. So as there we see the confirmation of Kujala currently in the car, unfortunately a ways down, having to try and make up for the loss as we watch that group of four actually split a little bit apart compared to what we saw a lap or two ago.
Let's head back down to pit lane. Joey Atterbury's down there with Tony Driver Development.
Yes, I am here with Lincoln Day. You just hopped out of the car, and I think your remark was the car is fantastic.
Yeah, this is easily the best car I've driven in this season. Tires were able to last a long time. Fuel was perfect. Track, nobody laid down any grease or picked up any dirt, so track was perfect also.
And how are these conditions? It's been so hot during these endurance challenge races all season long, but today's a little bit of a different story. We actually have a little bit of a breeze.
Yeah, I gotta say, it's so nice to not have to worry about overheating your tires after lap 3 and being able to maintain your tires and have the consistent lap time so you know exactly where you're at and where everyone else is at.
Great job in the car. We look forward to watching your co-driver close it out. Back up to you, Arjuna.
Lincoln Day's only been racing for about 5 years or so, maybe closer to 4 years, but picking things up quite quickly. And another one of the young drivers that Nathan Toney at Toney Driver Development has clearly identified something in. So gap up front, 6.7 seconds between Valentino Catalano and Wyatt Bricacek. But last time at the line, Catalano lost a full second to Wyatt Bricacek. Then 2 seconds between Bricacek and Liddy in the Hunting Force Racing 86, while Garrett Grist and Andy Lee lost a bit of time in their battle and now sit a couple of seconds apart from each other. The lead is going to be up for grabs, and for Valentino Catalano, he's going to have to pick and choose his fights here, because for Wyatt Bricacek, a win will not be enough to secure him the championship, Joe. He'll need Catalano and Tunio to come into a lot of strife. The main thing Gebhardt can do is keep their nose out of trouble.
Exactly. That's where communication with the team is going to be so important out there, letting the driver know, because it's a racer's instinct to just continue to fight. You want to push for every position. You don't want to be overtaken. The win is the safest way to take home that championship. But if the team is on there saying, hey, no, if you finish second, you're still the champion. You don't need to risk the car here. Those are things that you do have to keep in mind. Sounds like the 11 of Sufi with some damage that they do need to come in. So the black and orange mechanical flag being waved at them.
And a mechanical black flag also means you must come in on the very same lap that it is shown. You don't get a couple of laps. Our timing updating to show Oscar Tuno is still out there. I got word from Joey Atterbury, by the way, that there has been a pickup in the wind and a dark grey amount of clouds start to appear in the sky. I distinctly remember a couple of weeks ago when we were here for the MOTUL SportsCar Endurance Grand Prix that the wind was blustery, but between Saturday and Sunday changed directions quite significantly. And that was a factor that drivers were aware of, that into turn one, a headwind versus a tailwind can feel very different. But I say turn one, it's the kink that's probably the place that you're most concerned about, the aero impacts. The benefit of a headwind into the kink is actually slows you down. You can be a little bit more committed. A tailwind, it pushes you into the corner. It makes things sketchy.
Yeah, and it's also an interesting part of the track because it's one of the lowest parts. So it's down in a valley. You would think it'd be protected from that wind, but because it acts as this sort of funnel, it's kind of a Coanda effect on there. As Panaxis is in to try and repair that damage. Remember, they got the black and orange flag.
And sorry, Joe, was the rear of the car is missing quite a bit of bodywork that would usually protect the suspension, act as a diffuser as well. And I don't recall seeing anything that this car had been involved in that would warrant that level of damage. Joey, what are you seeing?
I completely agree with you guys. It's just completely gone. The diffuser, you see the vertical strake still hanging off of the car, but the complete bottom side of that diffuser, the flat bottom you want to call it, is completely missing out of the car. They are refiring it right now and sending the car back out onto the racetrack.
Unfortunately, I hate to correct you, Joey, but we've just been informed by race control that they're going to send that behind the wall. So it's going to make the right at the end of pit lane. Oh, and that is frustrating, but also very peculiar. So we've got some sleuthing to do as to what happened there.
I'm very curious if any of our cameras have spotted a giant piece of bodywork somewhere out there. I can't feel like that would go unnoticed. It's clearly not on the track, or else we would have a full course yellow so that they could pick that up. That is very strange that we just suddenly have a car missing a huge chunk of itself.
I'm often confused, but often not lost for words. Now, that camera shot at turn 1 shows the gray clouds that Joey had mentioned. You can never predict the weather in this part of the world. Always got to be on your toes. On your toes as well for Patrick Liddy, who out wide on the exit out of turn 3 might have lost some speed as Garrett Grist continues to hunt him down. These two only a couple of seconds back from Wyatt Brikacek, but lap after lap, the lead is being eaten into right now. 1.4 seconds gained by Wyatt Brikacek at the line last time. Oscar Tunho struggling to stay within the 2:01s when everyone else is now down into the 2 minutes, and pretty consistently as well. I wonder if that wind has just picked up and shifted the balance of that Gebhardt car around.
There you can see how stiff the wind is around here right now. Interestingly, even with the dark clouds, the track is still relatively warm at about 88 Fahrenheit on the surface currently. I would have thought with how cloudy it's been today that it would have been cooler, but we've been hearing from Joey that it is pretty warm and muggy considering the conditions. I wonder if the humidity having any effect on that. Is now we get a look at some of the teams and how they're also probably monitoring a lot of that weather.
All of them. Probably also wondering if there could be any safety car interruptions. That fortunately won't be one, but Patrick Liddy got very, very squirrely coming out through Canada Corner into Bill Mitchell Bend. It's allowed Garrett Grist to get back up into a podium spot, and now Tony Driver Development, second and third on the hunt. Oscar Tunho and Gebhardt Motorsport vulnerable. Another lap, 0.8 of a second gained by those hunting down the leader.
Well, that is a much nicer situation for Grist. He can now try and focus forward. Was about 1/10 slower than Brikacek, so didn't really gain any time on that lap. Maybe now that they are not having to watch the mirrors as much, Garrett could try and pick it up, see if he can start running down that 95 and get that second position. In the meantime, what was about a 6 or so second lead before we had that yellow is still sitting about 3 seconds between Brikacek and Tunho. So first, second, and third could be close together pretty shortly.
And Garrett Grist is in the conversation as well. We've got experience at the front of the field in these LMP3 cars. As much as we've talked about new and old generation, we saw Andy Lee fighting in the older generation car. Again, just a reminder, it's basically just a slightly different engine. Power delivery might be slightly different, yes, but ultimately performance will be pretty similar. The one thing you'll notice if you're there at the track is maybe a little bit of noise difference. Now, I noticed a car on the exit of the carousel. Is that Gebhardt Motorsports, Oscar Tunho and Valentina Catalano? The championship charge may just have come crawling to a stop.
We don't have picture yet, but on my marching ants, that car is stopped on the exit of the carousel. This could be a major moment out there because usually you don't have small incidents in that corner. It's high commitment through there. And yes, there's a lot of gravel to try and stop you, but it's easy to wind up sending the car all the way to the barrier. Full course yellow.
I try to always check timing before I believe my eyes in case I've misidentified something, but there was a flash of orange perpendicular to the track, and I just again go back to the question of if the wind picking up, maybe changing direction, had unsettled that car. And for the second time today, we're back behind the control of our safety vehicle as the field gets packed together. This is not going to allow the teams to make their second mandatory pit stop. However, we are getting closer to the point at which Travis Hill and Daniel Oliver will have to make their pit stop, because minimum drive time is 40 minutes, only 16 minutes till there, and oh my goodness, that is a big impact into the tires.
The only consolation here is the driver is out and got out under his own power. I was kind of watching, I was seeing that images behind the scenes before we cut to it, and yeah, he was able to climb out and get going here, but you could see disappointment, frustration, knowing that they have ended a great opportunity for a title.
And speaking of our points leaders, Oscar Tunjo, Valentino Catalano, now will wait and watch to see how things settle out. The beneficiaries, well, it's likely to be the Tony Driver Development number 30, has a 80-point advantage over their sister car, the number 95, and first and second as they run. It is control in the hands of Garrett Grist and Ari Baylog, and go back again to the opening couple of laps at VIR after they picked up that bit of damage. I don't think they would have thought they'd have been in this situation. They would have believed you if you'd said they'd have won that race at the Virginia International Raceway. I'm not a weather forecaster by any means. I like to pretend to play one sometimes, and let's do that right now, Joe. There's something heading the way of the track.
Yeah, so that is all precipitation, I believe. The question is that going to clear up by the time it gets to us? Because you can see it kind of dissipating a little bit as the time moves on. So that is a hard call out there. We keep talking about how dark it is getting above. That always tends to imply that we might be getting some rain, but it's not a guarantee. I think this is something where this race is not over. The teams are going to have to be very on their toes. 54 minutes is plenty of time for some rain to come down and this get thrown on its head again.
Let's catch up with Joey Atterbury again. We were just looking at the radar, but Joey, what are you feeling down on pit lane?
Well, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. It started out kind of overcast with the sun peeking through, but now, as you can see behind us, it's kind of all moving up towards, from, call it Canada Corner, towards turn number 1, and we do have several gray clouds overhead. The wind has picked up. It has cooled down in terms of temperature. Even the wind that's coming in right now, I can feel a few probably degrees cooler. And what does that mean? Typically there's moisture in the air. I think all of the teams up and down pit road are preparing just in case.
And the second of our mandatory 2-minute 15 pit stop visits could end up being for those wet tires. I'll have to wait and see. Joe, what have you been hearing from other people around the track, though?
Well, we're getting word from some of our camera operators that there's been sprinkles around turns 5 to 7. So that's the very middle of the track. Usually you'd kind of expect it to come in from the side. So apparently we might be getting some moisture. Now, it doesn't sound like it's enough to merit going onto those wet tires yet, obviously, but something to watch out for. And the drivers will notice that, especially once they get fully up to speed, because one thing racing so quickly does is when you get just even the tiniest little bit of those sprinkles, it suddenly looks a lot more dramatic on the windscreen.
Always say that the changing conditions are the most interesting, and what better challenge for Daniel Oliver, who says he's had less than about 5 hours in an LMP3 car in his Sim to Real project. He's ready to go. Now, they cannot make their driver change until the green flag is back out. They can do it on the restart, and I would say that's probably the best thing to do, because what we saw in the previous caution, Joe, was the teams that pitted when the race was restarting actually gained track position, and that's why Andy Lee and Patrick Liddy got in front of the likes of Garrett Grist.
So for those that are kind of confused as to how that all works. Effectively, if you come in at the restart, there's two factors. The other cars are not up to full pace until they get to that first corner. So you're not losing time to them as much as if you had pitted as it was a full green flag lap. The other thing I think that comes into that is when the cars are all packed together, nobody's really usually able to get the full pace out of the car. You're having to react to the other cars around you. There's also the aero wash that can sometimes cost you a little bit of time. So usually you're going to find yourself losing less time because not everybody, again, is running at full tilt. So yeah, I'm with you that was a very clever move by the teams to take advantage of that.
Maybe as well, even if you're not a team that needs a driver change, maybe you pit on this restart anyway for your final fill up of fuel. However, any pit stop that requires a change of 4 tires, which would mean if we do get any rain, and we do need to see the Michelin wet tires used in today's running, it would be another 2-minute 15 pit stop. Do you gamble and try and push that down the line? I'm not quite sure what the strategists will be thinking, but I do know is that based on timing, we've got 6 cars that are on the lead lap right now. Patrick Kuyula's 1 lap down. Danny Sufi's a couple of laps down as well. Kuyula's 3 laps down, excuse me. But this race could really go to anybody if you get the strategy right.
And if it was me, and of course, granted, I would not put too much weight into my opinion on strategy because I'm just a commentator, but to me it seems like I would wait to see, because any extra pit stop that you have to make and spend that time with the minimum pit stop time on pit lane, that's going to be a huge loss around here. So I would say hold on, wait to see if we do get that wet weather and use that to make a single stop. Because if you're making those 2 stops, suddenly you find yourself a whole lap down of the other cars that held out.
We'll let the better minds on pit lane make their minds up about that. 49 minutes and ticking. The one thing that we do know is Daniel Oliver needs to get into that number 2 Shopify Racing by tooth Ligier JSP 325 before we hit 40 minutes left on the clock. Safety car lights are still on, which means that we've got at least another 4 minutes circulating behind the pace car before the race can restart. If there was to be another lap of safety car after that, suddenly we're getting awfully close to the 40-minute threshold.
That's a good point. And again, that's something those strategists will be watching and considering in this part. There's a lot of moving parts in this one. It does look like, from what I can tell, the one car has been extracted and they are now moving to take it off of the track. So hopefully this should be our last time behind the safety car, unless there's anything else to be done in the cleanup over at the carousel.
It was tires that he hit, so hopefully it's a relatively simple task. And we are being told, as they take the car away on the flatbed, that the lights are out on the safety car, and we will restart this time by. So we know Shopify Racing coming in from 6th, but based on the last restart, we had a race between cars into pit entry. They are all jockeying for track position, and that's allowed within IMSA rules. As soon as the race is restarted, you have your move. So let's see who decides to pull the pin and head to pit lane when we get this race restarted.
Yeah, last time, obviously, that worked well in the favor of some, and I guarantee you that the teams that saw that happen have paid attention and will pick up that fact. It's one of those things where when you have an advantage in racing, you find some sort of strategic maneuver that helps give you time. You don't have it for long. Everybody else is going to pick up on it very quickly, and as long as it's within their realm that they can execute too, they're always going to try and pick up that time. So I think you may be right that we're going to see a flurry of activity coming down Joey's way pretty shortly.
And Joey's just been giving us some information. Lots of teams seem ready in the pit lane, but obviously with All but one team having done a driver change in the first pit stop window. Only Daniel Oliver stands on the wall as a driver with his helmet strapped on, Hans device ready to go. Final moments then for these drivers, if they do want any small adjustments, maybe on tire pressures on things, communicate that to those on the pit wall. Because I get the feeling that we are going to see all 6 of these competitors in. But again, if all 6 come in, it gives the opportunity for someone else to go and do something else. So we'll wait and see who is going to do something different. I'm just thinking right here, if I'm Tony Driver Development, I've got 2 cars, 2 opportunities to try something different. Maybe I would play my cards separately.
That's a possibility. Again, there is some merit in trying to go contra strategy to those around you. So we'll have to watch out for that. Could be worth trying to just buck the system. And as we watch that safety car with the lights out, this is where it is now going to leave these cars behind, and it's going to be more in control of Bricicek to decide when he goes on the restart. But like we've been saying, could be a moot point because it might be less of when you go and when you dive into pit lane instead. There you can see the gap that he is leaving. And this could still see him coming into pit lane because you still want to attack those cones, and that could give you some separation of the cars behind you. So let's see what happens here.
So with Valentino Catalano, Oscar Tuno, the Gebhard Motorsports pair that led the championship coming into the final 2-hour sprint, retired from the race. The first 4 all dive to pit lane, and it's going to leave out the Patrick Kuyla and Forbush pair. So Jules Caranta, the Frenchman, the 18-year-old, leads the race, but behind a bit of lap traffic as they dive down into turn 1. But Bricicek, Gris, Liddy, Lee, and Hill all hit their mark. Get ready for a driver change. Joey Atterbury's down there at Shopify Racing. Talk us through what you see.
Well, Daniel Oliver has the door open. Travis Hill is climbing out of the car right now. Fuel is already going in. Daniel making sure the belts are exactly where it needs to be in order for him to slide into this car. We talked to him earlier. He's got very minimal time in these LMP3s, so you got to make sure that the pit stop, the driver change goes extremely smooth. The fuel is already done, and now the crew is going to go to work on changing all 4 tires that I see. The front right is not a sticker tire. It is a scrubbed tire going on the front right of the car right now. It appears that the driver change is complete. Front left tire is now coming off of the car, and it is a complete scrubbed set going on the number 2 car. It is a very, very busy pit lane right now. However, this is the only driver change being done. Now we go to work on the back of the car as well. 3 of the 4 tires have been changed, and I see that Daniel is strapped in. He's completely ready, just simply waiting on the crew now, Arjuna.
And this is the pit stop where I would expect all of these teams are going to be trying to get as close to 2 minutes and 15 seconds from pit entry to pit exit as they can, because track position will be important. There was a couple of teams that went 5 seconds longer in the first pit stop sequence. Don't think you'll see that now. There's enough time that the pit crew finally decided that they did want to use a tear-off and roared around. Race off of pit lane, though, is going to see the Shopify car left slightly further behind. Off and away, very close, but it is going to be the white and red of Bricicek that's now tucked back in behind of Patrick Liddy. So I think Forte Racing have won this race off of pit lane, and everybody hits the pit exit and is okay on the 2-minute 15 minimum pit time as well. Get your tires up to temperature and pressure. Jules Caranta's got 1 lap on the field, but knows it's a pit stop. It's now a run to the checkered flag.
And I think this is where what you were talking about, going counter at everyone, can sometimes work out better. Earlier, I mentioned the reason you would try to pit early is to avoid all the cars battling. Well, he hasn't had that. He's been ahead of Kuyla, who's also not even on the same lap, so he really doesn't have reason to try and fight him and slow him down. So this is Jules Caranta able to really put the maximum speed down on this car during these laps. And I think, like I said earlier, if you want anyone to do that, it's Jules. He's felt very confident coming into this, despite this being his first time at this racetrack. He has a lot of experience in these cars, so he knows kind of where the limit is in this machine.
Down to this middle sector of the lap. These drivers now surely have got their tires in a better place. White Bricacek's got enough confidence, slips up the inside as they dive in towards the carousel. Not much that Patrick Liddy could do there, and Bricacek, bit between has been one of the quickest and most consistent drivers across of this endurance season. And you can see on the pit time, Patrick Liddy, 2:15.54. They were 2 seconds quicker in pit lane than Bricacek. That's where track position changed hands, but only momentarily. Back down to pit lane, Joey Atterbury's grabbed Travis Hill out of the Shopify Racing car.
So, Travis, you just hopped out of the car. Pretty long stint for you. Not only that, but I understand it's a birthday weekend for you, too.
Yeah, it's fun to be out here racing at Road America. No better way to celebrate a birthday than with all the team that we love and doing what we love to do.
So how's the car feeling out there? You just spent quite an extensive amount of time inside of it, and I know that it's quite warm and humid here as well.
Yeah, it's car feels great. I mean, that first stint was going to be a battle between Ari, Brian, and myself. They were really quick here and just trying to stay with them, put some pressure on them. Car felt great until I got a little bit of a flat spot in the left rear going to Canada corner, and then it was just trying to mitigate it. The way that first caution played out, it made sense to try to stretch that before we put Daniel in the car, just to save that tire and keep it going. So fortunately, everything's working out okay. That second caution really played in our favor. Got the driver change done. Now it's just up to Daniel to finish off nice and clean.
How has Daniel been performing in the car? I know it's relatively new to the team and relatively new to the LMP3 platform, but he certainly seemed anxious to hop in.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel's done an incredible job this season, especially considering how much seat time he's had in the real LMP3. That's a testament to all the sim racing that's happening around the world and all the driver development that's able to happen. So we're just proud to be able to be part of that and help his journey along. He's been incredible. He's also a programmer and a great addition to the Shopify racing side of things and what we want to do from a B2B perspective in these paddocks. So I think he's a great addition to the team, and we're looking forward to doing more with him.
Well, thank you so much for the time, Travis, and happy birthday. Back up to you, Arjuna.
Love to hear it. The program at Tooth Autosport that powers Shopify Racing, they are busy this weekend. They've got some programs racing on the streets of Markham, including in the NASCAR Canada Series. So great that Travis gives us the time after jumping out of the car before he gets back to the business of watching his teammates at work. Teammates about to fight, by the way, for second place. Patrick Liddy sits between Garrett Grist and Wyatt Bricacek. I thought Garrett Grist had maybe slipped through on the Forte Racing 86, but not just yet. Meanwhile, the Frenchman Jules Caranta brings the Forbush Performance Duquesne D09 to pit lane. He's had a couple of laps up to speed. Let's see if he's been able to make good use of them, Joe.
Yeah, this is the moment of truth, I think, and whether or not their strategy will work. Thankfully, I think this one could be a lot simpler since he's staying in the car. And we'll see also whether or not they're going to change those tires or if they're just going to send him back out. But for now, refueling, they wait for the signal to let him know that's all they need. And then, yeah, we see tires on the wall, so they are going to change them.
And stickers. You can see on the left front, for those new to motorsport, sticker tires effectively just means brand new and never used. When you go out there and use them for a lap or two, we call them scrubbed because you wash away some of the surface and the stickers that are on when they're delivered from Michelin to the teams. And Caranta now just sits and waits. You called him a Duquesne development driver slightly earlier on, but I'm always amazed when you talk about these young up-and-coming drivers. He turned 18 at the start of August, which means back home in France, he hasn't been legal to drive a car on the road until this month, but he's one of the quickest when it comes to an LMP3.
Yeah, I have a feeling that he shouldn't have any issues passing that test for his license, but It is amazing how young that they bring them in, and that, like we were saying, the talent that they find among that young age. Just hopefully a very good career up ahead of him. But now we wait for the clock to hit 0 for him, and there you go. They feel like that is soon enough. I can tell you that the leaders are coming up and out of turn 14 right now. There you can see it on screen.
Here we go. Race off of pit lane. Will the Frenchman have track position as he's hunted down by Wyatt Bricacek, or will the Tony Driver development car be able to slip in front? Still waiting for Garrett Grist to make his way past Patrick Liddy, but fastest lap of the race, punched in by Wyatt Bricacek, and at a perfect time, because he'll slip through on Jules Caranta as he blends out of pit lane. Caranta's going to be a couple of seconds in front of Liddy and Grist, but with sticker tires to get up to temperature, and then a couple of seconds up the road to hunt down our race leader with 36 minutes left on the clock.
Yeah, I think Caranta's in a pretty good position at this stage, although you talked about how was a little bit of contact. Thankfully, it looks like no parts were really broken on that, but the cars glancing one another down the moraine sweep.
Onto the brake, sweeps through does Liddy, but not able to follow through is Garrett Grist. This is, again, the second race in IMSA competition for Jules Caranta. And here at Road America, really getting to see the finest tracks that America has to offer, but the tires not in a window to allow him to defend, and Grist through as well. So the gamble of staying out maybe not quite paying off, and it's effectively a straight fight now to the checkered flag.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate, but sometimes you take those gambles and you find out whether or not it works or not. You know that for the future. You talked about Bricacek putting in that fastest lap last time by. Well, guess what? He just went purple in Sector 1 and Sector 2, so he's not done yet.
And as Daniel Oliver gets up to speed, I would actually say this is a good place for him to get confidence, because there's the pro drivers in front. He's not really being compared to them. And he's got a lap behind to Patrick Kujala in the Bronze Cup. So as long as he's able to hold that gap in the next 34 minutes, he'll have effectively done exactly what the team wants. And that's maximize the Bronze Cup points relative to their championship rivals. But in terms of our IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge Championship picture with issues for Gebhard Motorsports and for the Forte Racing 77, it now means that Tony Driver Development lead this race, but it's the number 30 that is in position to hold on to the championship. But it would be by just 20 points. That's how slim the margins that we're talking about are. Another fastest lap punched in by Bricacek. He's almost in to the 159s, but look how hard they're pushing behind him. Liddy kicks up a bit of grass up as they dive down out of turn number 3. Caranta struggling to stay with Grist and Liddy as they break down into turn 5.
Yeah, might still be getting those tires fully up to temperature here, because you're right, he's dropped out of the fight. These two, though, remain close to one another, but I don't know how much they want to fight. If they feel like there is more in it, they could try and run down Bricacek, who did reset that fastest lap down to a 2:193. We're getting very close to breaking the 2-minute mark here.
So as Grist closes up to Liddy, hasn't been able to make this move so far. Let's catch up with one of the drivers stepping in to prototypes for the competitive weekend. Slade Stewart's with Joey Atterbury.
Yes, we are here with Slade Stewart. Now, you have hopped out of the LMP3 car. Still a relatively new platform, but I understand that you're very excited every time you jump into it and absolutely love how it's been driving.
LMP3 is a new series for me. We entered this year just to backfill some racing opportunity to keep the lap times up, lap experience up, in support of a GT3 series I'm running in. But I've been having so much fun in this car that we've decided that we're going to campaign a full season next year. We've got the new car on order. We expect to get that in the next 2 months or so. I absolutely love the LMP3.
Now, we were just talking about how you were doing a race at Mid-Ohio, and it was torrential downpour rain. Can you be a little bit of a weatherman for us here? Because we've got a lot of wind going on. We've got some gray clouds. What do you think? Is it going to rain here before the checkered flag?
I'm not a weatherman, and I wouldn't want to try and collect that paycheck for being wrong 100% of the time. I don't know. I looked at 2 different radar apps. One said rain, one said no rain. So who knows?
Well, we look forward to watching Andy close out the race, and then you guys in your entire full-time effort in 2027 that you had just mentioned. Thank you so much for the time out here, and we'll get back to you guys, Arjuna.
We appreciate it.
So breaking news, they've got the new car on order, the JSP 325, I would assume, and they are planning to be in action for the full 2027 VP Racing Sports Car Challenge season. It's a good place for Slade Stewart to be. Riley Motorsport, a long-time runner of prototype cars. In fact, the last team to win a WeatherTech Sports Car Championship race in an LMP3 class was Riley back at the end of 2023. Still waiting for Garrett Grist to get close enough to Patrick Liddy to make a move, but for the first time, Jules Carranta's getting closer and closer. Maybe burned off a bit of the fuel, getting a bit quicker now as the car becomes lighter. 31 minutes to go, and they are starting to drop back from the race leader quite considerably, losing about a second per lap.
Yeah, it seems like at least Carranta has got his feet underneath him at this stage. His personal best last time by at a 2:01 flat, but they were actually about 4/10 quicker than Grist, also worth noting. So they're actually gaining on this pair to maybe make it a 3-way fight shortly. Also, you and I were talking behind the scenes. I am keeping an eye on the 77 because they're kind of goal hanging right now. They're hoping for a caution because they're on the lead lap, but they need something to kind of bring them back into all of this. Right now, they need a second stop to finish this race, but they need the complexion of the race to really help them out.
Here comes the move to the inside. Garrett Grist commits through turn 1. Now you can run wide and be dinged for track limits. And he's run wide enough that he's compromised Patrick Liddy into dropping down to 4th. Carranta sweeps through. 2 places change hands in the drop out of turn 1. And I'll be very curious to hear what the drivers had to say about that one if we could listen into the radio communication to the pit wall.
I think Jules is on it. Don't count him out on not attacking Grist here. I think as soon as he gets an opportunity, you're going to see him pounce. And Garrett is going to be watching that, knowing that, yes, he needed to make that move quickly, but I don't think he's out of the wood. It looks like Jules's car is very much up to speed. Yes, it needed a bit of time to ease into those sticker tires. Whether it was the tires or just Jules getting used to this track, I think whatever the case, the car and the driver have hooked up.
And for Forbush Performance, they are in their first full year of competition. We did not see them in all the rounds of this championship, but clearly in Jules, they've got a quick driver, and I had seen on social media that Jules has announced that he'll be back in that car at, I would assume, the final round at Petit Le Mans when the VP Racing Sports Car Challenge closes up its sprint campaign as well. So hoping that that is trending maybe to another full season entry for 2027. We've had some breaking news today. We've already heard from Slade Stewart that he and Riley are planning to be back for next year as a full-time effort. Tony Driver Developments announced that they'll be back with multiple entries next year as well for this revamped and quite exciting endurance future for the VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. 90-minute to 3-hour races, Joe, which is right around perfect, I think, because you've got the shorter races which feel a bit more like sprints, and then 3 hours, which it's not too long, but it's long enough for drivers who are still maybe honing their craft to get experience while sharing the car with someone like a Wyatt Bricacek.
I'm in complete agreement. I feel like that's just the right mix there to keep this all interesting, really test the versatility of these teams and these drivers, because sprint racing and endurance racing are definitely 2 different things to try and master out there, both from the driver's side and the team side. So I really want to see them have to be a good, well-rounded team. As I check those lap times, you're talking about trying to catch up to Bricacek. Even though he didn't even set a personal best last time, he was still the fastest car on track.
He is flying right now. Not quite down into the 159s, but I think, flirting with doing that as the fuel continues to wear off. And speaking of fuel wearing and running out, we've just heard from Joey Atterbury that Forte Racing and Patrick Kujala on their recovery drive. Brian Thenis having an issue at turn 14. The team doing a great job to repair the car and send it back out, albeit a couple of laps down. They'll be heading back into pit lane for their second of the mandatory 2 minute 15-second pit stops, 4 tires and fuel to go into that car and run to the checkered flag. They're doing it right as the window comes to an end. You've got to make your pit stops before we get within 15 minutes of the checkered flag. So we'll see them down in the next couple of laps. No improvement from Wyatt Bricacek. It's another quick lap, though. 2 minutes, 0.476. It's the first lap, though, that he is not the quickest driver on track because Garrett Grist, the 2 minute, 0.189, eats a couple of 10 sister car leading the race.
I was just noticing that as well. It's got to make up about 9 seconds, though, with 25 minutes left on the clock. Will take probably a bit more than 0.3 of a second a lap, I think, to run that number 95 down. So Bricacek could just kind of run this out to the end if he can keep the pace up. If he stays in those 2 flat 4s, I think he probably should be in a safe range. And the 77 Forte Racing team got to be a little bit frustrated because remember when I mentioned that Bricacek, that 1 lap was the fastest on the track. Second fastest was Patrick.
They could have very much, I think, been a contender today. And Brian, put his hands up, talked us through the moment, and it's just such an awkward final corner. You're always wanting to be as far on the left as possible. And that car was maybe understeering a bit already and just accumulated into a bit of trouble. Doesn't look as though, by the way, that Danny Sufi, Jake Williamson are going to be back at Axis Zone 4 Racing Duquesne. So both of the Gebhard cars are sat in the garage, unfortunately, and will not see the end of IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge. There's Garrett Grist, now 1.6 seconds in front of Jules Caranta as they come through Bill Mitchell Bend and climb into the final sector. They've dropped Patrick Liddy quite considerably. So Liddy was doing a great job of defending and holding up these two. But now that they've got clean air, Grist and Caranta at arm's length and struggling is the Frenchman to close back up to second.
Doing everything he can on this one. As there we see the pit stop happening for the 77, the team going to work, and we should still see, I think, Patrick stay in the car. Yeah, they're just kind of letting it breathe, giving him a little bit of cooling, maybe getting a drink as well. And there is the difference between Caranta and Grist, as that is what 2 seconds looks like coming out of turn 3. Last time by, Caranta was slower by about 0.6 of a second. So I wonder if Garrett is deciding it's time to start picking it up. He was quicker by 0.1 of a second in the first sector as well on this lap.
Just looking through some stats from the race at the Circuit of the Americas, which is our only real reference of Jules in this IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge. The tires now being done. The fuel will get to work on that Forte 77. But back in round 2, Jules actually had the fastest lap of the race. It was only a couple of thousandths quicker than Bricacek in the Tony Driver Development 95, but that's an impressive stat. He was pretty consistent as well, 3rd quickest across the weekend when you break it down kind of B-pillar style and look at the stats. But maybe no surprise that the most consistent driver this season has been Wyatt Bricacek. Was quickest last time out at VIR, 2nd quickest at Sebring and Circuit of the Americas, and just being consistent at the front. 8.7 seconds, the gap between Bricacek and Grist as they continue to trade 0.1 of a second here and there. Last time it was a 1/10.5 that Garrett Grist gained on the race leader. He'll need more than that if he wants to close in the 20 remaining as he rises up 80 feet of elevation and crosses the top finish to complete lap 40 of the race. That time by, it was another 0.07 of a second gain.
Tiny little margins here and there. And yes, I know I said that, Bricacek just needs to kind of ride this one out the way things are looking. If you're Garrett Grist, you do not stop pushing. You try and take those hundredths, those tenths of a second out each and every lap. All it takes is a little bit of an off track somewhere from the 95 to open things up. And if you aren't pushing, if, say, you give up 2 tenths per lap instead of trying to gain those hundredths per lap, suddenly you could find yourself in the difference between being past that car that had just had a slight off or looking at the back end of that car and still having to overtake.
Left side of the screen, Joe, I'll draw your attention to the pit lane time for Patrick Kujala. Minimum pit stop, 2 minutes 15 seconds. By our timing, they were 4 tenths of a second shy of that. And once race control notices, they'll owe us a drive-through penalty.
Yeah, I kind of don't blame them on this one. I mean, it's going to be a bit meaningless on their front, so they might as well try to push it all the way to the limit to see how close they can get. It's almost insult to injury at this stage for them that it'll just send them a little bit farther backwards, but they're not going to really. There you go. Right there, confirmation from race control, short pit stop, drive-through penalty.
Yeah, I should have rephrased how I said that, by the way. Race control would have already seen that and were in the process of handing down the penalty. It was more just when it got flashed up on our screens. Back at the line, let's see these times because it's so consistent between these drivers. They're in the low 2 minutes, 2:00.370 for Bricacek as he heads to turn 1. And the first lap in quite a while that those behind have lost some time. Garrett Grist, 4 tenths of a second slower. I know we're just staring at lap times right now, but we are looking at a very evenly matched battle, and it goes back to the strategies through the rest of the race, Joe, that have put us in this position, that have given Bricacek and the 95 crew the 9-second lead.
And yeah, I think that has really made the difference here today. The fact that they put themselves out of reach like that, it really has sort of been the decisive factor out there. And I think, you mentioned just watching lap times. I think this is one of the most nerve-wracking types of racing because it is not direct, wheel-to-wheel racing out there, which is exciting. But when the drivers have to put in those consistent laps, I think this is where they earn their money because they're pushing. The lap times that we're seeing out there are incredibly fast for these cars. And so they're all at 10 tenths. Effectively, any little mistake will be costly, but at the same time, they can't try and leave those extra margins. They've got to be right up against the edge of performance.
Talking of edge, I'm just looking around this track, and you had mentioned it slightly earlier that the track is regrowing some of the grass from I don't want to say damage, but just the reality of the MOTUL SportsCar Endurance Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago. 6 hours of racing, 54 cars around the track, and maximizing all the track on offer. We haven't seen any of those sheets that you had mentioned, Joe, being brought back onto track, which does show that these drivers went on their track walk and noted down exactly where they could and couldn't push the limits.
Yeah, exactly. And the track has changed recently. We've been talking about that a lot this week, and we've been using the term grasscrete for those extra little runoff areas that they've got because it's not exactly full concrete. The grass kind of comes through little holes in it. So there are some dangers in running wide there. But when it does provide grip where you can get away with it, you have to use that because that's an extra width added onto the track. That's extra momentum that you can carry onto critical straightaways around here.
That grasscrete is one of the places in turn 7 that was noted as a possible track limit place. Drivers reminded to rejoin safely if they felt that they had driven off the track while around other cars. You can just see there just how wide the runoff is, and even if the intention might have been to reduce the grip on offer, Crete still offers more grip than grass likely does, and I think that's where drivers will use every little bit that again, they can find out there. It's grown at the front once again. Bricacek, a couple of tenths here and there. He's pulled away from Garrett Grist. In turn, Grist has pulled away from Jules Caranta, Patrick Liddy, and Andy Lee. The top 5, very stable as we head into these final 16 minutes. Pit window about to close, but all teams having made their 2 mandatory pit stops. Daniel Oliver about to go 1 lap down and having to look over his shoulders and contend with Wyatt Bricacek continuing to fly his way through the final sector.
And think about how Lincoln Day is feeling about all of this as well, watching from the box now as the clock ticks down, knows that they're in such a good position, know that he's done all he needs to do to try and make this happen. And now his teammate is in control of their fate. So it's always probably a little bit nerve-wracking out there when you can't do anything more but just watch and wait for the race to come down, especially, like I said, when it is so close on pace out there between the 2 cars, knowing that they've got to hustle every lap, every corner.
And I'm staring at the points matrix in front of me that our team at IMSA very helpfully put together for us, Joe. And I don't think I can quite see any real changes brewing with how things are running. Garrett Grist behind Wyatt Bricacek. It's going to be the Tony Driver development number 30. If they can stay out of trouble for 15 minutes, that is on course for the very first IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge. And I go back to VIR and the start of that race. If you told them that this would be the reward for sticking in and giving everything they've got, they might have called you crazy.
I completely agree. I mean, this is a real storybook first season for that team, just managing to overcome those difficulties and get back into it, and then coming away here today just by making sure they hit their marks. Yeah, it's not looking like they might get the win, but they've done everything they needed to do. Caranta, though, I think is really the main problem here. He is still close enough that he could create a bit of a risk there. And we've seen when he's fast, he's very, very fast. Now, they've separated by about 4 seconds, so that gives them quite a bit more buffer. There you can see the difference between them now. But if that car gets any closer, I think someone's going to get on the radio to Garrett and say, hey, you got to pick up the pace again.
Cast my mind back to VIR as well as we just think back to the course of the season and how some of these moments influence the championship. I'm not necessarily one that likes to say this moment led to this. It's a lot of things that end up happening. Swiss cheese model, if you like to read, investigation stories and whatnot. But for why Bricacek, it was an uncharacteristic mistake from him at VIR to run wide just before coming onto that back straightaway. Lost a lot of ground in the championship hunt as a result of that. Provisionally, with points running as they are, Bricacek would be 40 points away from the championship leaders at the end of this race. So it's a short 4-race championship, Joe, but we've got to remind ourselves that there's been lots of drama through the course of the season, including starting back at Sebring, where Gebhard Motorsports had a penalty and then still managed to come back through and come out on top.
And I think when you have those short seasons, it makes every little moment all the more important because small mistakes have a bigger impact. When it's a longer season, you have opportunities. It's more about the consistency of it. This is still definitely a consistency championship, even with the shortness of it. But if you have a bad race, you just have to look at the number 1 car. With that car winding up out of it, it should have been their day. They look so fast. It looked like they could wrap it up. And then suddenly, just one moment, and they're gone.
To prove how the points calculations were so fluid as well for Baylog and Grist in that 30, if they finished second, but Catalano and Tuno were still in the championship, they needed Catalano and Tuno to finish 5th or lower. So we were really having to wait until the end of this race to know which way the championship was going to go. It's going to be slightly different next year when we go to the full endurance form. There'll be around, so maybe time for gaps and things to develop through the course of the season, a season that will start in the last weekend of February as we return to the Sebring International Raceway for another 2-hour race to kick off the VP Racing Sports Car Challenge season. That round is going to be on a USAC weekend. It's a season where we'll bounce between IMSA and USAC weekends. Great to have the ability to visit some really historic tracks. Mid-Ohio, Watkins Glen, Road America, Road Atlanta, but maybe most interestingly, at the very end of the season, a 90-minute race to hopefully crown our champions, including the Airbnb Bronze Cup 2027 champion that earns an invite to the Rolex 24 the following January. We'll be heading to Lime Rock Park, Joe. I'm so looking forward to that.
Oh my goodness, that'll be frantic around there in these cars. These are very, very fast vehicles, especially through quick corners, and almost all of Lime Rock is quick and medium speed corners, so that is going to be fun. Not probably what the teams would want to finish things out, because Lime Rock is also kind of notorious for throwing things on its head. It can be a chaotic track.
And there's a certain layout that I don't think we'll use because we'll run the chicane instead. But if we ran the classic Lime Rock, we would see some of our cars, probably the GT4s and M2s, getting a bit of airtime as they hopped over through the middle sector. 10 minutes left on the clock, and the gap between Warbrick and Garrett Grist now over 10 seconds. They've given as good as they've got, but Grist just seems to have that little bit more. He's not been able to break into the 159s, though, as Patrick Kujala has been able to do. Fastest lap a couple of laps ago, and while they're not going to finish inside of the top 6, it's just a reminder of the pace they had this weekend, Joe.
It, I think, is something that they can take maybe some encouragement from, knowing that it's there. And one of the things, like you mentioned, already looking towards next season, the teams will be using this and focusing forward, saying, okay, let's collect the data, because we can always use this someday later. That's why you see that 77 has not parked yet. Not only that, but also because they could still inherit positions if anybody else has trouble. We don't wish for that to happen, but sometimes you do pick up a few points here and there just because the unexpected can happen. But regardless, the big thing is that the team wants the driver to stay out there. They know that they can do more to the setup. They can do more to find out how the tires behave over the course of the stint. So you stay out there and you keep driving. And like I said, clearly, the car is fast with that purple lap sitting next to that number 77 on the tower right now. So you kind of put what has happened behind you. You look forward. It's always worth looking forward in racing rather than looking behind.
And the thing about racing is the highs are really high, but the lows are pretty low as well. And there's only going to be a few of those days where you are a winner. Brian Till always likes to say that if you had a car that was capable of 5th place and you finished in 5th place, well, you should be very happy about that and almost celebrate it like it was a win. But if you had a car that was capable of winning the race and you only finished 5th, it's a very different story. So kind of set your expectations differently than maybe traditional stick and ball sports where there's 20 teams in a league and any 10 teams can be winning on a given weekend. Here in the world of IMSA, only one team per class gets to celebrate with the top step on the podium. Should be 4 laps left to go for Wyatt Brickacheck based on where he is, maybe 5. He's got a bit of time in hand to play with, so we'll see how quick he wants to be on the next couple of laps. But into the final stages of this race, and any concerns that we had about weather dissipated. The gray has been replaced with plenty of sunshine here in Wisconsin as our drivers head to the conclusion of this season, Joe.
Yeah, looking a lot more inviting out there in the sunshine right now. And I feel like this is a drive that will do Wyatt Brickacheck's reputation no harm at all. Really impressed with how quick he has been out there. Mature drive, knowing that he had to keep that speed up once he inherited that lead and not only did so, but has managed to extend the gap over Grist. So for the 95, Wyatt will probably put this one on his resume, if you will. And I think some teams will start to take a closer look at this young man.
Yeah, the last time we saw him in the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship was last year in the Lone Star Racing Mercedes, but he's been busy in competition, both with some of his VP Racing Sports Car Challenge commitments with Tony Driver Development, also racing over in Europe, has been in the Alpine Le Mans series as well. So he's got experience in the new generation of LMP3, where it has been really burgeoning and flourishing in Europe. Looking forward for us to see a full field of the new generation cars next year. And one by one, as we head into the latter part of 2026, we'll hear the programs that drivers and teams are putting together as well. It's always interesting when we now talk about a shift from sprint, where some of these teams have had just one driver in their lineup if they've skipped the endurance challenge. Well, now they've got an opportunity to bring in a second driver, and maybe someone who brings experience with the car, with the tracks, whatever that is. All different things that can be important. I'll take Jules Caranta for it. Only 2 races into his IMSA career, but there's lots of potential on his side. The one thing that he's still learning and will appreciate every lap on track that he gets, Joe, is just seat time. Track time around somewhere like Road America, because the tracks in Europe are very, very different to tracks in the US.
Yeah, we had talked about that a little bit earlier, how getting seat time is of utmost importance to drivers, just because it's hard to come by sometimes. And I will say that, yeah, the tracks over here often have a very different flavor to what you see over in Europe. There's just often kind of a bit of a more old school feel to North American racetracks. And I have to say, I'm kind of amused behind the scenes, because I had mentioned it's always tough when you're the driver that's not in the car at the end. It sounds like Lincoln is pretty nervous. I'm hearing Joey say that he's actually pacing down in pit lane, and that's because Wyatt has won in this car this season, but Lincoln was not there that race. So this will be Lincoln's first win.
It was the Texas two-step that Wyatt Bricacek did in the race. Titus Sherlock in the 95. Glad that Lincoln's back, and I can only imagine the anticipation and the excitement that is awaiting him. But nervy moment with what will be 3 laps left to go as Bricacek breaks the timing line with 4 minutes and 15 seconds left. Behind, Garrett Grist has dropped off the pace slightly. We were pretty consistently in the low 2 minutes, and now closer to the 2:01s, which I think tells us a lot that on those restarts, our drivers were really having to push. And I think maybe the closest that we've seen the silver drivers, the expected pro drivers, Joe, this season.
Yeah, and as we watch that car once again come down into the braking of turn 5, I do find it interesting how much things have separated out on track after the last pit stops. It was quite close. We saw, what was it, 4 cars all in a fight. There's nobody closer than I'm seeing 9 seconds apart right now. I thought that we'd have a little bit of a tighter fight down to the end, but when you're a driver, you want to be able to get away and have a bit of a dull end to the race where you can focus on just what you're doing out there, which is what we're seeing with Wyatt as well, able to really kind of be on his lonesome out on track. But for the most part, it is now just drivers being able to do their thing, not have to go wheel to wheel.
Let's quickly just talk about the Bronze Cup as well, with the implications that today's race is going to have there. The Bronze Cup winner will end up being Garrett Grist and Ari Baylog, as only 2 teams are not Bronze Cup. That's the 95 and the number 1. So effectively, Dan Oliver and Kula in the Shopify Racing and Forte Racing cars, respectively, finishing this race up for the bronzes that they're competing for. Travis Hill for Shopify Racing, Brian Thenis for the number 77. Now, coming into this weekend, these are points, Joe, that are combined between the sprint rounds and the endurance rounds. So there's a bit more to think about here in terms of how it plays out. 70 points covered them. That's going to close right up. Brian Thenis led coming into this round. He will be still in front, but by a slender margin. Effectively, it will be winner takes all when they head to Road Atlanta for the final races of the season.
Yeah, and I talked about it a little bit earlier that it does kind of complicate things when you've got the multiple different championships to worry about, and you kind of almost have to weight them in different order of, well, which is more important to us. Ideally, you want them both, always. But in the heat of the moment, when sometimes there are decisions that could be riskier, you just have to try and figure out, do we want big picture stuff, as we got a little bit of a lockup from Wyatt coming down into turn 8 there. But yeah, it does make for a fascinating way that they go about this championship. And like you said, next year, many more of those endurance races is going to make it all the more trickier to try and figure out.
Although we don't have to think about sprint versus and which points count. It will be a lot simpler for us in the booth. I'll also correct myself. I was looking at the points as they stood after the last endurance round. If you in class sprint round at the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park a couple of weeks ago, it's just 10 points between Brian Thenis and Travis Hill. So Travis Hill might actually be in the points lead heading into the final weekend of the season. All to play for. 1 minute left to go. It means the white flag will be in hand as Wyatt Bricacek climbs back up to the start-finish line. And for the penultimate time today, crosses the line. 1 lap left to go in the IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge for 2026.
That lockup apparently not making people down in the pit box happy, as certainly just still some nerves behind the scenes wanting to see this race finish up. But one more lap, 13 seconds at the start of this lap. Again, Wyatt's race today has been impressive. I tip my hat to the way that he has managed this one, just looking so fast out there and dealing with the pressure almost like he has ice in his veins.
And with the reality of Sebring and Circuit of the Americas, or rather, Sebring and VIR not being smooth rounds, only Circuit of the Americas really being trouble-free for the 95 Tony Driver Development Team, this car might have been in championship contention, if not for the mistake that Wyatt had made at VIR. But that's all in the past. It will be a 1-2 for Tony Driver Development to end the season off, and I think that will be a big thing as well, Joe. The team's still growing. They've got a lot of young talent that Nathan Tony continues to nurture and find out there in the world. They're the only team that's won multiple races this year. They're going to make it 3 wins out of the 4 races, and in some quite remarkable fashion as well.
Yeah, that's going to make everyone sit up and take notice. A lot of what could have beens means that next season, I think they're one to earmark to watch out for as a potential for the title.
Well, the points leaders coming into this round were Oscar Tuno, Valentino Catalano in the Gebhard Motorsports number 1. However, a mistake through the carousel in a race interrupted by the stop and start of the safety car saw Tony Driver Development promoted to 1 and 2. It will be Wyatt Bricacek and Lincoln Day winners at Road America to close out the IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge. But behind them, Ari Baylog, Garrett Griss, Tony Driver Development's number 30 crosses the line and provisionally earns themselves the very first IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge.
You can see how much this means to the team. It's a cliche that we trot out, but it's so important to remember that this is a team sport. The drivers get all the glory as the front man or front woman in this, but when it comes down to it, there is a whole lot of people that are pushing to try and get those wins, to get those championships.
For historic venues and some history written into many chapters of racing here at Road America. We'll be looking forward to catching up with our winner, hopefully with our champion as well, down in Victory Lane. You mentioned the effort behind the scenes. We would be remiss not to also mention everybody that's made this event, this broadcast possible. That's our corner workers, flag marshals, and our camera operators and production team as well, bringing us some great shots of some really interesting racing. All cars have crossed the line. We'll wait for them to return back around. Might take a while. It's 4 miles here at Road America to cool down as 2 hours of racing comes to a close.
And that just gives Wyatt all the more time to soak this in. I'm sure he is smiling ear to ear inside of that car, knowing that he's managed to bring home another one for the team and is certainly going to be able to celebrate it tonight as, like you said, season's over. They do have some other racing that I'm sure he's going to be doing, but should probably be a bit of a party in Elkhart Lake.
I wager they might have to wait to get their championship trophies until the IMSA Awards during Petit Le Mans weekend, but that wait might make the celebration feel even more special. MOTUL Petit Le Mans getting increasingly close as we head towards the end of the year, and one of my favorite events of the year. Podiums as well for our drivers to celebrate. Bronze Cup winners for Baylog and Grist. So they've kind of wrapped up a couple of different things to enjoy and celebrate here tonight. But Road America, really interesting challenge for these drivers. And I looked through the season, Joe. We started at Sebring, went over to COTA, VIR, and finished here at Road America. This was one of the most unique calendars that I think they could have put together for an endurance racing debut championship.
Oh, I love when they get all different types of tracks in there. I think that, again, I like teams that are well-rounded. I like drivers that are well-rounded that can hop in and do anything. And yeah, not only is it all different unique tracks as well, but a lot of really classic circuits. COTA being obviously the newest, but you look at the names of where they raced in this championship. There's going to be some drivers that are very proud of tracks that they have added to their list of places they've competed, or in some cases of some, have won at now.
Well, I'll let you go and join the podium celebrations, Joe. Thanks for being part of this IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge broadcast booth as Wyatt Bricacek joins Tony Driver Development and Lincoln Day in Victory Lane here at the Road America paddock area. You can see Chris Green grabbing some victory snap team there. This will be a well-earned celebration. And I'm sure somewhere in the mix as well, Joey Atterbury is ready to go and ask these drivers exactly what this means to them. Joey, what you got?
Yeah, well, we got Wyatt Bricacek just climbing out of the car. Lincoln, why don't we grab you real fast, because you had already hopped out of the car. What does it mean to see this thing parked here in Victory Lane?
Oh, this is a dream come true. I mean, we've been wanting to do this entire season. We had a few unlucky races where we should have won, but, you know, this is ecstatic. It's amazing.
I don't think that Lincoln has stopped smiling probably the last 30 minutes. He was a little nervous when you were in the car. He was pacing back and forth at the pit box. Now, you did one heck of a job inside this thing. Talk us through that race and ultimately bringing it home in P1.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I mean, Lincoln did a great job to bring me the car in P2. And after that safety car, you know, everything was to play for. A few other cars did a different strategy on the pit stop, so we had to work our way through them. And I think the Gebhardt just made a mistake. But after that, we had another restart, and it was just getting that other minimum stop out of the way and maintaining the race from there. And the car was great. The team did amazing. So just super happy for everyone involved.
And from what I understand, this might be unofficial, but it moved you guys up into second in the points in the Endurance Challenge Championship. How does that feel for Tony Driver Development? I mean, not only claiming the championship with the 30, but then having you guys move up as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, we didn't really expect it after this up and down season, you know, 2 wins, 2 DNFs. It wasn't really ideal, but, you know, the car was always there. Lincoln was always driving amazing. He gets better every time we drive. So, you know, it's really awesome that all the crew and team members get to just have this moment where we can be proud of what we did this year.
Congratulations. You guys all should be proud of exactly what you did this year. We'll let you celebrate, and we'll go find your teammates in the number 30. Back up to you, Arjuna.
Only for a couple of minutes, Joey. We're going to get back to you with those champions in just a moment's time. I can confirm provisionally, based on my math, Bricacek finishes second behind his teammates in the IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge. So, great end to the season for Tony Driver Development. And Lincoln is right. They could have won at Sebring. They could have won at VIR as well. That car very much has been one of the stronger and more consistent competitors through the course of these four race seasons that hopefully we will enjoy a bit more of them next year. We mentioned some of the tracks that have already been confirmed. The final schedule still to be announced. But we'll start on February the 26th and run all the way through September 25th with our final VP Racing Sports Car Challenge race next year as the endurance format becomes the main format. Unofficial race results coming in a moment. Let's head back down, though, catch up with our champions.
Standing here with Garrett Grist. Now, you just brought home ultimately the championship here in the first year of the series. What does it mean to you guys?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, as a team, it's huge, right? Obviously, I coach Lincoln, and Nathan and I look after Lincoln's racing, so it's huge that, you know, he won today and we won the championship. The day couldn't have gone any better.
Well, and talk us through that season, right? Because it's not just one here today, but it was an extremely tough drive for you at VIR. Ultimately came away with a win and ultimately really boosted that championship as well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, first race at Sebring, I didn't do a great job. And then we had a caliper failure at COTA. So after the first two rounds, it was a bit, you know, questionable. But obviously, yeah, we won overall at VIR and then second overall here. But yeah, it's not just about one race. And you can see that today. I mean, Ari, the three guys battling for the championship, Ari's the one that stayed clean, right? And he handed me the car in a great spot. And we were able to just cruise for the last, 55 minutes. So.
Now, what this means for the team, Tony Driver Development. Pretty cool to not only win the championship, but have your teammates come up to second in points as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like you said, first year for the team during this, first year of the championship, and to get a 1-2, I think it shows just how good the guys are we have, right? Especially, you know, Nathan at the head of it and all the boys. It's a high caliber team.
Well, Garrett, we'll let you go find your co-driver. Congrats on the championship.
Thank you, guys.
Back up to you, Arjuna.
Thanks, Joey. And congratulations to Garrett Grist, to Ari Baylog, provisionally our inaugural IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge champions for 2026. Unofficial race results still wait for post-race tech to clear, but can all be confirmed. But Bricacek and Lincoln Day celebrate in victory lane, 13.4 seconds clear of Grist and the hunting sister car for Tony Driver Development. Jules Caranta, on his second appearance stateside in IMSA competition, gets a podium alongside of Matt Forbush, while Patrick Liddy fourth for the Forte Racing number 86. Andy Lee, Sparkle Farts, finishes fifth endurance debut. We'll see that car for a full season next year. They've already said what the plans are, while Shopify Racing by Tooth and the Bronze Cup battle finish in front of Forte Racing. But that championship fight goes down to the wire at Road Atlanta. Oscar Tunho, unfortunately a mistake for him, sees the Gebhard number 1 that led the points coming into the weekend, finished down in 8th, while Pin Access Zone 4 lost the rear bodywork on the car and never ended up returning to the track. Well, that wraps up our IMSA Airbnb Endurance Challenge. I want to say a big thank you to our entire team at USAC and IMSA that has made this all possible. Our corner workers, officials, everyone at the track. That includes our broadcast team as well. Joe Peak, Joey Atterbury, alongside myself, Arjuna Kanki-Padi. We'll be doing this next year for a full endurance season. There's more sprint racing to come in the VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. Make sure you're staying tuned to IMSA's YouTube for the rest of 2026.